a choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a ride.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expanding reality.
A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Expanding reality.
Welcome to Expanding Reality. I am your host, Brandon Thomas. On this incredibly cool episode, historian, archaeologist, and dear friend Mark Olly returns to speak about his new book, The Polychronicon of Merlin, Joseph, and Arthur. Dude, this is awesome. You guys are absolutely going to love this. So we talk about that, plus Ancient Aliens. He's on that coming up, so that's fascinating, as well as the Oak Island treasure mystery. He thinks he has it solved, so I say we turn him loose on it, as well as mummies in the Grand Canyon and the Grand Canyon itself. Guys, Mark is a dear friend, so this one's easy and fun, so really enjoy this. All the ways, of course, to find him located down in the show notes. All the ways as well to find us located down there as well. Got some brand new shirts up on the merch store, so make sure that you guys take a second to take a look. And without any further ado, let's get to this incredibly cool conversation with Mark Olly.
I can do that with this voice, can't I? Yeah, let's do the real. Welcome to Expanding Reality.
Dude, I love that. We're going to go with that. Mark Olly, welcome to the show, man. Welcome. I love you, dude. I love you. It's so good to see you, man. You have joined me for a couple of the Frequency Theorists is what we call those. It's an expansive insider show that we do. I'm going to link it below. You've been over there on a couple of them with us. And, dude, those things are crazy fun. We get together, we talk about music, conspiracies. I've found out some awesome stuff about you. Your band, Copperworm, of course, has a new album coming out, which we're going to talk about. But super excited to see you, and what's great about having a return guest on, man, and we're just family, we're brothers now, is that we don't go through the, like, where are you from, introduce yourself. I'm going to link your first episode below. You guys go check it out. His book, of course,
look at this
first
one.
book, there we go. Crystal Skulls and Human Heads, located down below. That's what our first episode is on. So again, located down below. But dude, you've got a new book out. Please tell us about this thing, man.
Well, that's as I said, Polychronicon of Merlin, Joseph, and Arthur. Let's just get the advertising out of the way. If anybody wants to get it, go to Amazon. They're all on Amazon. All the books are on Amazon. So go find me on Amazon. Just type my name in. You'll get 8 or 9 books will come up. Take your pick. Loads of good stuff. But this is the biggest and it's the longest, and it's taken the longest to put it together. So it's only really been out since February officially. There were a few pre-Christmas releases because we wanted some reviews. It's got fab reviews. People seem to love it to bits. It's not the King Arthur people are used to. We're going for the real thing. As an archaeologist, I'm very much, shoot it's a duck, let's get down to brass tacks here. And that's what it's all about. So it's very different. But it gives you all the background you need to know about Merlin and how he became what he became and who and what he is, and about Joseph of Arimathea and the Holy Grail, which is where he comes in, and the development of early Christianity and what happens when those two things collide. And then along comes Arthur. So you got Arthur and his knights and his associates and his stories and the legends, they're all in there. And then there's 2 more chapters after that, quite important. What happens immediately after Arthur? Because nobody ever talks about that. It's like, 1 minute you're in 500 AD, and the next minute you're in 1100 AD, and people are like, "Hey,
that's because history is a lie," and they just pulled 1,000.
Yes, how the hell did we get from there to here? So the book covers that. So you're looking at Saxons, Danes, Vikings, the Welsh, the ancient Britons. You're looking at all of that. And then the last bit, chapter 5, is called The Legend. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek because I knew what was going to happen. I thought the academics are going to look at this and go, he's made it up. It's a load of nonsense. So the whole of the last chapter is nothing but source material, one after another, after another, after another. There's about 400 references there, books that cover everything. They cover right from the saints' lives, in the 8th, 9th, 10th century, right the way through to books that were only published, last couple of years. It's all in there. So just for the academics, for the nerds, they can read that and they can see how the legend developed, So it's all in there. Well, the first 4 chapters are knockout, absolutely knockout.
Plus your new record coming out. Plus you've been taking time to go on Coast to Coast and Ancient Aliens, and you've got a new book, and you've got so much stuff happening, man. I am just so proud of you. I'm so grateful for you. And you're here for all of it, and you're smiling like today. We were messaging back and forth. You have a cold. I was like, dude, do you want to reschedule? You're like, no, man, let's send it. Let's go. I love it.
My voice is croaky because actually, do you know when you arrange things, you don't really pay any attention to what you're arranging, and then all of a sudden it dawns on you that you've just arranged like 40 interviews in 5 weeks, right. You know what I mean? It's like, what have I done? So understandably, my voice is a little bit worn out by now. And then somewhere in all that, in the middle of all that, Ancient Aliens decide they're going to chuck out season 19. I'm on the one for obelisks and I'm on the one for crop circles. So like you say, it's just, it's bonkers. And I'm already working on the next book. So if you want to get to the end and chat about that,
yeah, we'll get to your next book at the end here. I want to know, and God, it's so cool. But again, guys, y'all know this in the audience. All the ways to find him, of course, linked down in the show notes. Make sure that you'll check that out. Okay, so let's talk about this. So are you saying now that King Arthur wasn't made a king because some watery tart was sitting in a lake distributing swords?
Yeah, Monty Python, the moisture bint with the...
get that reference.
Yeah, totally. There's a couple of things in there, wrapped in that. The first thing is, and I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, that a lot of the legends have got a tiny, tiny little seed of truth in there, because the bards and the people that were writing for kings and, doing all this for overlords and doing these stories had to make the stories believable. So up to the medieval period, and then eventually the invention of printing, there's always a little tiny bit of, truth in there somewhere. So yes, the sword was important in Arthur taking up his position of office, because he was crowned at 15 and given a bronze sword of office called Calderbolg. Now, the bronze sword of office, you couldn't fight with it. You'd be like, hitting people with a piece of lead. It'd just be useless. But as a ceremonial sword, it was vitally important, and it was pulled from a stone mold. So you've got a kernel of truth in that legend, okay, which they completely made a complete nonsense of in medieval times. Because, yes, in medieval times you made swords on anvils because they were made of iron, but you don't pull an iron sword out of an anvil in a churchyard in 500 AD. It just doesn't happen. So they lost the kernel of truth somewhere along the way. He was never a king. There were military commanders, military rulers known as Dux Bellorum, which means Duke of Battles, and there were at least 5 of them in Wales, and 4 of them with swords all turn up at his coronation. And his coronation is in Chester. So he gets the authority to join this elite group of post-Roman military commanders. That's what they are. The king at the time actually might have been a Welsh king, a chap called Melgwyn Gwynedd, Melgwyn of Wales. He was probably the king. And later on in his life, he serves, I think it's Theodosius, which is the last of the Roman emperors. He goes over to fight for him on the continent. But essentially, he's a warrior thug. That's what he is. He's a really tough, hard nut. That's his function.
So why didn't any of the other guys that he was running around with have those legends cast about them as well, or did they?
1 or 2 of them have got tales about them, but I think the crucial part of Arthur is when you look at what his legends are, they are the absolute last of a golden age. He's the last Dux Bellorum to survive. He's the last to follow the Roman pattern. when he dies about 3 or 4 years after his death in 539, the volcano Krakatoa erupts. We get the Leonid meteor shower. There's tidal waves, there's plagues. The sun gets blacked out for 3 years. No wonder they couldn't work out where the poor guy was buried, because nobody could be bothered to write the records out. You start to get the picture. And Merlin's the last of 3,000 years of druids. By 600 AD, the Merlins, because there's 6 at least of them that I've got, that title is gone, because everything that they represent is wiped out by the Anglo-Saxons, and the Anglo-Saxons hate him to bits. They just know him as this faceless warrior that just keeps kicking their ass every time. They don't know who the hell he is, and they don't really want to know who he is either. They're not going to sing anything heroic about King Arthur. They won't do any tales of this amazing king that isn't. They just won't. But the Britons, the Welsh, and the Danes and the Vikings, who then ultimately develop into the Normans, they're the foundation of what we've got over here in England now. They're very interested, because it's their hero, it's their type of hero, and that's all in the development chapter that I mentioned earlier. That's where you see this. What is essentially a relatively minor, leader developing into this, medieval superhero.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. Kind of at the end, it seems like a almost like a melancholy end, sort of a Don Quixote type archetype, where there's like no more battles to fight. The war's over, kind of thing. Like he's just got to.
It gets really bad at the end, actually. Some of these names will be familiar to you, but the first Merlin is Taliesin. He's alive in about 420, 430. The second Merlin is Ambrosius, which is Uther's elder brother. So he's Merlin Ambrosius. The next Merlin Lalogan, Merlin Dearfriend. He's a 102-year-old, 103-year-old, magical guy that's in all the legends. He makes it right up to the Battle of Baden. So he sees the victory. He sees Arthur's victory. And then comes the kicker, because the next Merlin Willett, is Merlin the Mad. He goes mad because basically the ancient Britons, after Arthur, descend into civil war. After the Battle of Camlan, when Arthur's killed, they start killing each other. So he goes slowly mad. He goes slowly insane. He finishes up in the woods of Celadon, which is Cumbria and Lower Scotland. He ends up there going nuts. So the decline is very quick. It's within a single person's lifetime. And then he hands his baton on to Merlin Tertugan, who is the last one. And he's a poet who lives in the lowlands. And by 600 AD, they're gone. But you can see the decline. Everything from sort of Bane onwards, like you say, is nothing but pathos and destruction, and he gets killed by his own son. None of his family survive. He has 7 sons and none of them survive. So that tells you how violent his times were. He kills a couple of them because they rise up against him. A couple of them die in battle. And then you got the famous one at the end, Mordred, who absolutely hates his guts because he abandoned him as a child. Trust me, the story's like Game of Thrones. It pales into insignificance compared to the legends. And they have this big bust up at Camlan, and of course Mordred has a go at him with this poisoned Saxon spear. So Arthur's theoretically dead, or passes on to the other world, whichever you believe, within 3 or 4 days of getting this spear injury. But Mordred dies, in the process during the battle. And there's only I think there's only 7 people survive the battle.
Jeez. How crazy is that? You go in thousands of people and there's like 70 standing around. You're like, are we still doing this or what?
Yeah, it's nuts.
So it sounds. So do you think that it was a case of that the Saxons, it was an inevitable defeat for King Arthur and the crew, and that maybe Merlin and King Arthur were just, that particular Merlin and King Arthur were just like the last refuge of this empire that was inevitably going to collapse anyway? Or do you think that because Arthur fell, that was the collapse and it was sort of a pillar that carried everything?
There's a definite tension between the two. What I do rather cleverly is through the timeline, because it's a Polychronicon, I can drop in the entries from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. So it's almost like you're watching what Arthur's doing and you sort of cheering him on, but in the background you can see this insidious creeping enemy getting closer and closer.
Yeah, it's like a cutaway. You know, it's like a cutaway to the other person's base and then their base, and you can see what both teams are doing. That's awesome.
Absolutely nailed it. That's what it's like. So, 1 minute Arthur's there, defeating the Saxons and kicking their ass in Wales. But the next minute, the whole of Essex has just fallen, or the whole of Wessex has fallen, or the whole of East Anglia has gone. So you can see them creeping up. So there is an inevitability about it. But what you do realise is that Arthur actually stopped them dead, literally dead, for about 30 years. They were terrified of going anywhere near him. So he really was awesome. You can understand why they deliberately tried to avoid him. They deliberately tried to write him out of history. He must have been the biggest embarrassment in Anglo-Saxon history, but he stopped them for 30 years. And when they finally got rid of him, the Britons decided they weren't going to replace Arthur with another king or another leader because they were waiting for him to come back. So they didn't bother to replace him for about 70 or 80 years. And the Saxons just sat there waiting for him to come back. Damn. So, it's 600 and something AD before you see any decent movement. It's nearly 100 years later, before they're making any kind of inroads into Arthur's territory, which is absolutely mind-boggling.
And was it just because of the legend, because they didn't know he had died, and because they just thought he was going to show up any minute?
Yeah, it's a mixture of that. Not only is there more than one sort of version of Arthur, there's more than one Duke of Battles, so they're obviously hesitating about that. You've also got this problem in 542 when you get hit by basically nuclear winter fallout, and everything goes to hell in a speedboat. That drags on for a long time. You've got 30 or 40 years of crops burning in the fields and people dying of the yellow plague, and so the Anglo-Saxons are having it pretty tough as well. So it kind of holds everything up, which everybody, believe it or not, in this country put down to the death of Arthur. Yeah, so he was that kind of bloke. There's a brilliant poem. Got to tell you about this poem. The very first reference to Arthur. There's a poem in southern Scotland, and it's pages and pages and pages of this Pictish poem, early Pictish poem that survived in early medieval form. And all these pages and pages go, hey, this warrior's brilliant, this warrior's great, this warrior did that, this warrior did this, blah, de blah. And it goes on forever till you get to the last page. And just on the last page, there's this last line of the poem, and all it says in Pictish, it just says, but he was no Arthur.
Damn. So an entire page after page of poem written about this amazing dude, but he was still not the legendary.
He was no Arthur. Now, by using the language, you can trace that all the way back to the early 600s. So within 100 years of his death, this guy, Arthur, is famous enough to have stuck in the minds of the warriors up in, southern Scotland. And he's stuck in their minds to such an extent that they're still comparing people to him. And they're still failing, they're nowhere near him. When you start to put stuff in chronological order, wow, it's mind-boggling. The stuff you come up with is incredible. Far better than all the Geoffrey and Monmouth nonsense,
Yeah. Sword and Stone is cool, but it's even cooler the way you describe it. Like it's a physically chiseled out imprint, negative relief of a sword that they pour molten iron into, or steel, right?
Yeah, they'd have two halves of a stone mould, and they'd put wire around the mould, so there'd be a hole in the top. And then they'd pour the bronze in, which is a massive ceremonial thing. It's the sacred metal of the sun. And it pours in and it shines, and you get all these sprues kind of, spitting out. And then they wait till it cools. They take the wire out, pull it apart, so you've got it in one half, and then whoever is the spiritual person responsible, which in this case I'm presuming it would be Merlin Le Logan, it's the old guy, he actually grabs the sword and pulls it out the mould. But there's just the suspicion that maybe the new owner does that, Yeah. Maybe Arthur really does do it,
Yeah, sort of a rite of passage in the same way that the story presents it, as if he has to pull this thing and he's the only one worthy. But the same, thing would be true, because if you're standing there, the sword's being made for you, all the people around are encouraging and going through all this with you, then yes, the sword is for you. Therefore, you are worthy to receive it. You know what I mean? So it's a brilliant...
He does have a formal coronation. I mean, his formal coronation is recorded as taking place in Chester. and the other sword-bearing nobles obviously turn up, and then he gets presented with this thing, finished. But
I think it's cooler. I think it's cooler that they built it in a boulder that was split in half, formed, wrapped in wire, poured things, rather than this thing sticking out. I mean, it's a cool. Both are cool stories, but like you said, when you get the history into it, I mean, I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah, I mean, Arthur did have two. He had two iron swords, but they were Roman. They're Roman-style gladius. So he had two of those. One of those was given as a gift by Richard the Lionheart during the Crusades. He sent it into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre because Richard never went into Jerusalem. He said he was too blood-drenched as a warrior, so he never went in. He wouldn't go into the Holy City. So he sent one of his men in and presented it as a gift. So I've got this wonderful idea. One day I'm going to phone up the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and I'm going to go, hello, have you got a rusty iron bar in a cupboard somewhere, and you've got no idea what it is, hey, I can tell you what it is.
So has no one confirmed that it's there? The story says that that's where it was taken, but nobody says that there's a sword meeting its description there?
I feel a television program coming on. No, nobody's chased it.
Dude, this is yours.
So many of these artifacts in the book, and I do it on purpose. I drop them like breadcrumbs. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? This grail, that grail, this relic, this object, this sword, this shield, this. I just drop them all in, and I'm just dying for a producer to phone me up one day and go get them. Go find them.
You know me, and I know a lot of people. We're going to talk. I didn't know this was a mission of yours. We're talking after this. Stay on after we get done with this. Dude, okay, so tell us about, if you don't mind, because now I'm just enthralled by
far
this.
away,
So what about the shield that you were talking about? Tell us about that.
It's got an unpronounceable Welsh name that begins with W, sort of like Wonderburthrucher or something it's called. Anyway, what it means when you translate it out of the Welsh, it just means face against the evening or face against the setting sun. So, which translates roughly as this thing will protect you against death. You're not going off to the lands of the death where the sun sets, in the west. This thing will stop you from dying. And what it's said to have on the front a boar, and on the back the image of the Virgin Mary with child. Now, what's interesting about that is we've actually got archaeological remains in this country that have both Anglo-Saxon pagan and Christian iconography joined on the same object. So that's correct. And then there's a shield, I think it's the Battersea shield, came out of the Thames in London, that has a boar on it. It's got the outline of a boar. So again, you're back into reality. You're back into the tales of archaeology and real discoveries, Absolutely. So that was his shield,
That's so cool.
He's got lots of other things. I think there's about 30 odd different weapons. He's got names for all of them. There's about 5 or 6 different swords. There's a ship, a dog, a shield, a spear, a couple of daggers, and they've all got legendary names. And I've listed them all. They're all in the book,
What dog?
Oh gosh. Okay, you're going to love this.
I am going to love this. Go ahead.
His dog, right? Everybody's rowed over this. It's been a major argument for ages. His dog in Welsh, I think I'm right in saying, is called Cabal. And it's very often referred to as Cabal. Now, what that translates as, you ready for this, is horse. Now, what you've got to remember is at this point in time, you've only got Welsh cobs. They're only small horses. But you've got socking great big Irish wolfhounds.
Yeah.
So what that's telling you in plain English or plain Welsh, ancient Welsh, is that his dog is the size of a horse.
Right.
And
like
it's not just a horse. Yeah, it's a horse. It's an Irish wolfhound. You know what I mean? You can put a saddle on this thing. So I love that. That's absolutely amazing. So that's in the book, obviously. But fancy having a dog called Horse. This is some of the sense of humor is really dark as well. There's some great moments in the book.
That's amazing.
Really.
So the dog's name was Horse, or they referred to it as a horse? Do you know the dog's name?
They called it a horse.
They called it Horse. Okay.
Cabal.
Yeah. See,
so you can,
Cabal. See, and my wife does this. She'll name cats like a bear or cougar or something like this. I think it's adorable when people name a species of animal after another species of animal. I just think that that's adorable. This is fascinating, dude. So a bunch of little daggers, bunch of little iconography. Now, what I love too is that you pointed out the pagan and Christian combined iconography, because that was a very big iteration to get all the pagans over to the Christian side. They were like, "Hey, dudes, we got the same thing. You just got to give up all the gods and just say cool to one." So,
well, let me just drop a tiny bit of evidence in there for you, because you're going to love this. We've got this helmet, and it's called the Benty Grange helmet. Now, it's dated to about 600 AD, but I think it's older. I think you're looking at 500s. You know what I mean? I think it's contemporary with Arthur. And it's got this boar, Germanic boar on the top with all these bristles. And it used to have panels of boar's tusks in it. So you don't get much more pagan than this, It was probably 100 years old when it came over here. It's a proper Scandinavian, Anglo-Saxon helmet. And guess what? There, on the nose piece, inlaid, is a Christian silver cross. So the guy that's wearing it is basically, he's edging his bets both ways, you know what I mean?
Right.
He's ticking both boxes. But there's only a certain period of time in the north of England when both of those symbols would have been able to be used like that at the same time. And that is from about 500 AD into the days up to the plagues after the death of Arthur. So I'm going to put the helmet between 500 and 550 AD. And any archaeologist that disagrees with me can go and chew his knuckles off. At the end of the day, I don't care. Wailing and gnashing of teeth,
That's right. Y'all go nuts.
I really don't care.
Yeah, I've already published it. I'm going to go on Expanding Reality. We're just hanging out. So y'all enjoy your conversation. That's fine.
There you go.
So interesting, dude. So another thing that's so fascinating about this is the degree of Merlins. I thought Merlin was one dude. I didn't know it was a title or a series of people. So clear that up for us if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, what was interesting is I'm not by any means the first person to work that out. There was quite a famous Welsh scholar that was looking at the Welsh tales in the 1500s. So now you're talking before the dissolution of the monasteries. And he's looking at the histories and he's thinking, there's two of them. There's no doubt about it. There's two of them during the Legends of Arthur. And he comes down with exactly the same decision I did. First one's Logan, second one's Willet. There's two very distinctly different Merlins. There's been loads of efforts over the years to try and merge those two characters together, but it just doesn't work. They're totally different. And what it appears to be is that the Druids are basically the last of the Greek philosophers, the astrologers, the astronomers, the natural scientists, herbalists, poets, bards, visionaries. That's what they are, but they all have their own personality. So at any given point in time in Wales, one of them was obviously more prominent than the others. So as I said, the first one is Taliesin, fabulous, world-famous Welsh poet. Nobody would argue with that. But his name is Merlin. But he's very early. He's too early for the chronology. Then Ambrosius, he's one of the major characters of the Arthurian cycle. He's the older brother of Uther Pendragon, the father of Arthur. But Ambrosius, he was so enlightened, he was such a good warrior and a political leader and a religious leader that they gave him the title Merlin because it was appropriate. Then you got the two Merlins during Arthur's lifetime. Then immediately after that, as I say, you end up with this guy up in Scotland, Tortugan. And then there's another one, I think, after that survives up in Ireland. Bluchbard, I think his name was. But nobody has any surviving information about him. But in total, there's 6 of them, and they stretch over a period of about 250 years. It's a title. It's an honorific title. But I mean, go on.
And what was interesting, because you said the first one, Thessalonius, what was his name?
Taliesin.
Taliesin. I was nowhere close. I got the T right. All right, cool. It sounded like you said that he didn't have the title of Merlin in the history, but that the title of Merlin was given to Ambrosius. So it sounds like that Ambrosia was the one where the title was bestowed, but then they were kind of like, who else was like this guy? Dude, this...
Oh, no, Taliesin had it.
Taliesin had it. Okay.
He had the title. He's the first.
The first. Yeah. Okay, so what was that title regarding from him? Was it just, where did the magic tie into it? The magic wizardry bit?
Well, if you look at what Taliesin was capable of, his strong point in his poetry was that he could foretell the past, the present, and the future. So that was his gift. It was prophecy, and also he could do it on an individual level. So he could turn up in your court as a king, and he would go, "Hey, you're going to have a bad day next week.
Damn.
Guess what's going to happen to you?" You know, which is an amazing ability to have.
Yeah.
So that was his magical ability. Was one of prophecy. The next one, Ambrosius, like I say, organizational, religious, political, military. Boy, was he like the top man. So you'd want to give him some honor. I kind of think Merlin, the next guy, you know, Merlin Le Logan, he's the guy you always see in the movies, you know, kind of puts a staff up and goes, "I shall blot out the sun," you know, wham, and it's like an eclipse and everything goes black, you know. So he's the kind of guy everyone would have been, wow, what a guy, you know. Is it magic or is it science? You know, ooh, I don't know about that one. I think it's a mixture of the two. The next guy then is quite obviously an astronomer, because he has an observatory built for him in the forests. His sister, who is actually a prophetess, she builds him this observatory, which by the description in the story, it sounds like a mini version of Stonehenge. But she builds it up in Cumbria, up in the lowlands of Scotland for him, so he can kind of observe the stars and times and seasons. So basically, he's a human clock. You know, he's recording history. And then the last guy, you've gone all the way full circle with the last guy, Tutugan, because he's writing poetry, very much like Taliesin was at the beginning. But some of his poetry, especially to do with battles, he was a dab hand at predicting what was going to happen in battles. When the Scots are fighting the Saxons, you know, he's the guy you want on your team. And that's kind of where he got his honorific title from. And then all we know about the guy in Ireland is that he probably went from Scotland to Ireland and he was a poet. That's all we know. But then the days of the bards, the troubadours, the poets, you know, which are the 600s, 700s, 800s, 900s, that kind of time period, that's just really taking off. You know, it's really happening. So in one way, he's the last of the old bards, but he's the first of the new bards as well. You know, it's a new function to be able to turn up at court and deliver that sort of thing, you know. So yeah, it's a flow. It's a flow of science and magic. That's what it is. It's going all the way back to the Bronze Age, you know. It's where Druidry begins.
Dude, it's so cool. It's so cool. It's so cool. You know, and it's kind of like King Arthur over there, I guess in the UK, if I will say it this way, is like the, I don't know, like Davy Crockett or something here. There's like this legendary character. So is that the thing? Did you find that? I mean, you've traveled all over. I mean, King Arthur's probably a bit more prevalent in your backyard than over here, right?
It's interesting. The Arthur that I'm dealing with, mostly in North Wales, that's not a million miles away from me. I can drive into North Wales in an hour or so. But Britain's only small anyway. You can blame the Normans for moving it to places like Glastonbury and Tintagel and, you know, taking it south. That's all politics. That's later, which I do cover in the book. I mean, I absolutely tear it to shreds, but it's not really relevant, you know, to the Arthur that I'm dealing with. He's such a powerful, heroic character. You know, I've sort of brought him back north. But he always was north, you know, he always was in the northern part of Britain. I mean, Camelot's Chester, it's the Roman capital of Britain. That's, you know, 20 odd minutes down the road from where I am here. You know, so I'm familiar with the geography as well as I am with the legends. I had a bit of help from Scott Lloyd and Steve Blake, who did the Keys to Avalon and Pendragon, The Search for the Real Arthur. That's on Element Books. They did it in the 1990s and just going into 2000 before Element went bust. They had another one as well on the Grail, so I got to see some of that material. But they can speak archaic Welsh better than me. And Scott was the chief librarian at the Welsh Library of Aberystwyth. So it was like, just phone him up, you know, and go, "Can I have access to the Black Book of Hergus, please?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course you can. Come on down." So, you know, that really sped things up, you know, over the last 25 years or so. That's really got things going.
Yeah, like local source material. That's amazing.
Absolutely, totally. And as I started answering questions about, where's Arthur's family? Oh, look, they're all up in the Old North. The Hen Ogledd, which is the Welsh for Old North. Where's all the sites? That he's mentioned being at. Oh, look, they're all up there in the Old North. And you just kept tumbling over it. By the time you finish, you could see exactly where he was. Absolutely, no doubt about it.
This is so cool. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna hook you up with a producer or something. We're all gonna manifest this together, guys. Okay?
Yeah.
And we're gonna go look
it.
for some of these lost artifacts. But we're gonna go on this stop, and Mark, you'll be our guide, and we'll take a group of us, and we'll go out there and just hang this thing out, dude. We've got this covered.
Yeah, let's do a weekend in North Wales. I'll take you around it. Yeah.
Oh, done. It's booked, guys. Write in if you want to be a part of that. We will absolutely get this thing set up. We're doing this stuff now. It's just quick. Okay, so I want to know just like one of the most fascinating things that blew your mind getting into this, and you were ready to have your mind blown. But what is something that on this journey for this work that you just completed? It's amazing. Again, guys, linked below. What is something that just blew your mind about it?
I think it's the fact that it is so 21st century. Let me just read you what I put on the back of the book, because this is what, if anything pops your mind, this is it. Okay, it says this: Merlin becomes one of an ancient line of Pythagorean scholars and political visionaries. Joseph of Arimathea, a religious dissident fleeing persecution and death to far-off foreign shores. Arthur, a hardened womanizing battle leader who loses his entire family and culture to war and eventually to natural disaster. God. That's like yesterday's newspaper headlines.
It is very contemporary. That's amazing.
Wow. And, it's only when I got to the end of the book and I wrote the bit on the back and I thought, my goodness, it's real.
Yeah, it's just history repeating. It's just the same thing over and over and over again with these similar archetypes.
It's real. It's real people, real places, real things happening,
Yeah.
Yeah. Forget, dressing up in shiny Renaissance armor and fighting dragons to save maidens. Forget all that nonsense. Got nothing to do with it at all.
It's cool how they get conflated, but the actual history that you were able to detect is so cool as well. I mean, you go through your periods with it, right? Like you love learning about the legends as a kid because it's just awesome. They animated a great show with that. And then you get to this point where you really appreciate the depth that it is and the real stories of real people. This is fascinating, Mark.
I mean, I'll give you a good example. We mentioned Mordred earlier on. Well, when Arthur's a teenager, he's being taught swordplay in this Roman villa, which is on the shores of Bala Lake. It's archaeologically excavated. We know exactly where it is. At Godstad, exactly where Arthur stood. We know exactly where it is. And it's Hector's villa, and that's where he was taught swordplay. While he's there, he meets Gwyar, who is this local maiden about the same age as him, and as you do, they kind of get it on. They become a couple, and Hector says, yeah, go on, let's stay together, you guys make a go of it. And they produce Mordred. And then all of a sudden, they're only together a very short period, couple of years, he gets the news that his dad, Uther Pendragon, has just been murdered by the Saxons. So he's up, it's his turn, he has to go and deal with stuff. And as he starts taking on his role, Gwyar and Mordred get pushed further and further and further into the background. So you can see their hatred of Arthur growing. Then Arthur goes off and decides he's going to deflower this maiden in a local village because he's a warrior and he can. And Mordred ends up marrying this warrior's sister. So you've now got two families that hate him. And eventually he ends up, for political and military reasons, marrying Guinevere because she's a Pictish queen. So he's got his queen and, this, that and the other. He's got his warriors and all that. But now he's got these two families waiting in the wings. And ultimately, it's Mordred that kills him. Now, when you start looking at this in chronological order and you see it all building together, all of a sudden, you've got Mordred marrying, Whale's sister. When you see that happen, you go, whoa, I can see where this is going. But unless you get all the baggage out of the way, unless you get all the original legends together, these things don't line up. They don't marry up until what I've done. You string it out in order and all of a sudden it starts to make sense. And it honestly, You can see why, some of the slightly prudish, extremely religious medieval lot, were like, "Whoa, we need to put a bit of a shine on this." We can't leave this like this.
Yeah, it's incredible how the interpretation of history, and it's brilliant what you said as well, because the Saxons coming in, we're lucky we have anything from it at all, because history is told by the victors, right? And so it's interesting, any of the history, how is any of it verified? But I like also that you went out and found Vikings and several other cultures that spoke of Arthur, and that's how you were able to verify it.
There's a fabulous story. I mean, I was going through the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. There's a couple of other chronicles as well as a Chronicle of Essex and one or two other bits and bobs. And I'm looking at what's going on, and they actually tell you what the Vikings are doing, because the Vikings are annoying the Saxons as well. They really don't get on. So, there's a bit of Saxon bashing going on there as well. And one of the entries says, and the Vikings attacked the monastery in North Wales at Bangor. This monastery at Bangor-on-Dee. Guess where the Arthurian library for the Welsh was?
Bangor-on-Dee.
Bangor-on-Dee.
Damn.
Bingo. That's where everybody, Geoffrey of Monmouth and, the death of Arthur, La Mort d'Arthur, all that material, all the real big, famous Arthur material is coming from the library at Bangor-on-Dee.
Yeah, so the medieval Rat Pack. I love it.
All of a sudden you've got Vikings running all over it. So when they'd finished, robbing it and deflowering the maidens and pulling all the jewellery off the book covers and this, they actually sat down and talked. They must have done it at some point. And they're like, "Arthur, we like the sound of this guy," and you can see it happening. You've got these points of contact. It happens in South Wales, it happens in Chester. And the more this happens, the more you can see this stuff coming out of Viking culture and then Norman culture, because, of course, the Normans are, Northern French. And that's an interesting one as well. There's a really good story about Northern France, where it turns out that, forget Tintagel and all this nonsense, Uther Pendragon's wife, Aegea, is French. She's actually French. So when you know that, that means Arthur's at least half French. He's also got about 10%, 15% Spanish in him as well. But when you find out that his mum is French, and she comes from exactly the areas of northern France where his legends are popular. So it's like, all of a sudden, now I understand why the French have got a hand in the pot. You know what I mean? And it's like there's so many things like that get answered as you start going through the book. Almost every page is like a light bulb coming on, and it's just amazing.
What's amazing to me is the work that you did in Crystal Skulls and Human Heads. You find stuff that's just out there. You also remind me of just a couple of other archaeology friends that I have that just shit that's other archaeologists will go out and just spend their lives on and write papers and get tenured and all this stuff. And then they don't see the things that are right in front of your face. But you have an intuitive look at this stuff. You have more of in my mind, you have a very broad perspective, a very broad set of lenses in which you view this through.
Don't get me wrong. I'm tied to certain academic foundations. So I do a lot of work at Chester. I've done a lot of work in the past at Liverpool. I'm at Wilmslow Guild, which is the oldest adult educational facility in the world. That's coming up for 100 years, not in a few years' time. So I've got the academic background, but this is the kicker. My career does not depend on that.
Right.
So I have a modicum of freedom, and I've got this enormous belief that I'm not writing for academics. I'm not writing stuff that's never going to be seen, that is going to rot in a private library somewhere or a storage box forever. I am writing. I am a communicator. I am writing for the public. I want this information out there, which makes my approach slightly different. But it does have to be said, it took about 2 years, maybe 3 years to write Crystal Skulls under lockdown, but it took about 45 years to write this one.
That's an insane book. I remember having you on, and you, earlier on, and I want to say it was in between when I had you on for this and a live or something like that. Anyway, but you were talking about this fabled book that you were working on, that you and Philip were talking about publishing, and you were like, dude, it's huge and it's color and I got to do it right. And this was over a year ago, dude. So you told me about the book that we're talking about. Yes, right there. Video version in the show notes, guys. But of course, it's going to be linked. It's a beautiful book. And so I'm excited that you get this thing out, because I'd already heard about it. And so to see you do it, and then, Philip Mantle sends me interview requests for new books that come out, because I'm with you guys. And so when I saw saw yours come through, I was like, yes. I wrote you right away. I was like, dude, having you on, of course, let's go.
Well, there's a story in that as well, because I kind of thought, how on earth am I going to get a UFO publisher to publish a book on King Arthur? There's just no connection there at all. There's no.
It's
and then all of a sudden, it dawned on me. Philip Mantle's a guy who has no fear. He's got no fear at all. He will put out whatever he feels is factually correct. If a UFO lands on your front garden and little green men get out of that UFO and he can prove it, it's going in a book. So I thought, okay.
He can't prove it. He'll let you print it because it's your story. Yeah.
So a book on King Arthur that changes everything, that really upsets the apple cart. It's a breeze for Philip. Absolute breeze, Why not? And I think he's glad he took the punt and went with it, because he's getting some too. Great results.
Dude, I'm so glad he is too. And when we started our publishing house, Ridiginal Publishing, that Philip, I had a meeting with him and I said, hey, here's what I'm doing. And he was so sweet. He sent me the contract for you guys. So basically the same contracts. We use the same thing. And he was just so sweet in all of it. And I was just like, dude, I'm so happy. You're just such a mentor for me in this. And he was just like, yeah, here's the info. Didn't treat it like competition, nothing. Because I go, and it's not that. And he understands that. But it was so cool because I'm the same way. I'm like, let's publish this. That's the thing is I'm taking from his cues. I was like, dude, we have to get these stories out for these people. And if, Schuster won't publish you, then we will, reach out, guys. If you got a story or anything, just reach out. I'm here for you.
I mean, I had 7 major publishers. All of them said, I won't name all of them, but they're on the level with people like Bloomsbury and Llewellyn and stuff like that. And they all wrote back to me and they said, this is one of the most brilliant books we've ever seen. It's absolutely fantastic, but it's more than our career's worth to publish it. We can't do it.
See, God bless Philip Mantle and God bless you for writing this damn thing. But also, and same thing. And I take so much inspiration from that. He gave me so much balls and chutzpah to be what I want to be, which is just, dude, share it. Just get it.
21st century. That's got to be the mantra. Get it out there.
Get it out there.
We're not hanging around like they've done for the last couple of 100 years. We're going to say it, get it out there.
Yeah, we'll
absolutely.
Throw it in print. If you don't want to read it, don't read it, but it's out there and someone will absolutely love it and resonate with it. And we've actually found, and I know Philip shares this as well, is that there is such a craving for that because other publishers turn down the brilliant work that they first of all acknowledge and then secondly won't print because it does upset the beautiful apple cart. And here's the thing with that. Looking at like the show I do and things like this, I didn't call it like this is what aliens are. Yes, I'm highly, highly motivated to talk about that. But the whole point was to leave it very broad and open and expansive, right? So same thing with like the foundation on which we're building Ridiginal Publishing on. It's, dude, come as you are. Like I've got the only requirement is actually authenticity. I don't need to verify any of your shit. This is your work. You keep all your copyrights. Like we are very empowering. I just want to help you get your story out. That's it. And we will absolutely print that. But again, that foundation is there for us to give everyone a voice, not to give only a certain people that fit into a certain look and category of voice. And eventually, sometimes you'll get marketing people that come in and all of that. And it can go askew. This will never go askew. This has a foundational, organizational mission statement to it that won't allow for the things that you've experienced in the other publishers to happen to any of our authors. So what Philip has done for you, man, is release this thing and you watch. This thing is going to go nuts. It blows up. You're going to rewrite the whole thing. And then now all those other people will be calling you back going,
yeah, can we do a different edition of it? Can we do one in leather, with golden trim and all that? I'll be like, no,
sure, but you're
absolutely
not.
Not. Philip can do that, But,
yes, that's right.
He's got it. He's got it. I mean, one of the things they picked up on as well fairly early on is that the style of the book is very. How can I put it? How can I describe it? It's kind of blocky, but in an easy way. I've got a certain writing style. Quite a lot of people have said I write in a certain style.
You do.
At the end of the day, what most people don't realize, this is exclusive to you guys, is I'm actually dyspraxic. So I'm writing as a dyspraxic. It's like dyslexia.
Yeah.
And it makes you go back and reread things over and over and over again. It's what dyspraxics do. But also it makes you a bit of a perfectionist. You've got a certain way of tackling things. But the mainstream publishers don't like that. They just like this rambling narrative of, non-factual whatever. You can drone on forever. So you might get, a couple of facts every, 10 or 20 pages in some books, and the rest of it's just rambling nonsense. But what a dyspraxic does, it makes you focus. You've got to get that information in. So I think that's working, because you'd be amazed how many other people out there actually warm to that. It's not a bad writing style, but it's different. It's not what you'd normally find, in the style that books are written. Like yourself reading some of these books, you're thinking, yeah, I like this, and it's fast. It's a helter-skelter ride, and it's bam, 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 bam. But it's dead easy to read. So I've sort of reinvented a writing style of my own that's just me. But it gels, it gels. Not with publishers, but it does with readers. So,
And that's, I don't know.
Like you say, I'd encourage other people to, have a go. Rise above anything that people say to you. Have a go. There's a book there, no matter what, dyslexic, dyspraxic, whatever. Have a go.
And I love that, because it's such a creative way in which you write. And your Crystal Skulls and Human Heads. What I like too about having friends that are authors is that I read the book and the inner monologue is in your voice. So I have you as an audiobook and my voice as I'm reading this thing. It's so nice, Mark, honestly.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, well, and it is interesting though, because being someone that's just been so addicted to books since I was in fourth grade, it goes a long way back. My fourth grade teacher gave me a Calvin and Hobbes book, and I'll never forget it. And I sat down with Calvin and Hobbes. I'm in fourth grade. I sat down with a Calvin and Hobbes book and a dictionary, and I had to know what they were saying. And I was just so interested in the way that story was being told. And of course, Bill Watterson, he puts like these crazy dinosaurs and F-14s and shit, and then a bunch of comic strip stuff. So it was just fascinating to me, and I just fell in love with reading. And so to find authors that are so creative, I put you, also Peter Shampoo is one of these authors, where he takes the reader into consideration when writing the book. For instance, one of his books, he has all writing on the left page and pictures on the right pages of the entire book. And because when you're reading that, it mimics the polar pattern of your brain.
Yeah, I've just done that. The UFO book that's coming out later in the year, I've just done that.
See, it's things like that, though, like that extra attention. And I don't mind the ones that go on and on and on, and that's fine. And there's benefit in that, too, and you know this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the unique authors that, like you, that really take pride in being so damn unique, but then also aren't in alignment with publishers that constrict them. You know what I mean? So you number one are free and beautiful, and number two, do no harm but take no shit. And that's my motto too.
Absolutely. I mean, it's little things that are not little things. I like when they put quotes in the original language, and then they don't bother to translate them. Yes, it looks really clever, but it's no help to the reader.
No,
and loads of numbers, with footnotes.
Yep.
That annoys the hell out of me, because you can't read the book for looking up stuff, Or worse than that, they put them all at the end of the chapter.
Yeah, the reference endnotes I'd prefer over the in-between information. And I read a book that you're fine. I read a book absolutely very interesting recently, but it was a challenge to read, just simply because it was a lot of references to foreign names, and then they were taking Egyptian names and then putting the parentheses in, and so you get like a sentence every paragraph that you can pick up a sentence out of, but it's challenging to read. It's exhausting. You know what I mean? It's
academic. It's what the academics tend to do, and it annoys me to bits. It really does, because you can't get into the book for all the baggage that they've strapped on it. Why don't if it's that important, put it in the book, and if it's not that important, go and write another book.
See,
but don't bother me with it. Just I want to read the book. I want to get on with it.
How many people though sit here and talk about the way that people write? But that's an interesting from a perspective. It's very interesting, but we appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about some of the stuff that you're talking about on Ancient Aliens. So again, guys, thank you first of all for all the Merlin. Fascinating. The Polychronicon. Will you say it, please? Because I like the way you say it better.
Polychronicon
of
Merlin. It's Poly, and then Chrony, and then Con.
I know.
Polychronicon.
I just like the way you say it. So the
Polychronicon of Merlin,
Joseph, and Arthur will be located down below, so you guys make sure to check that out. Again, fascinating. So tell us some of the stuff about Ancient Aliens. First, do you mind, what are your thoughts on giving us some behind the scenes? What were they like to work with? The production staff?
Wow. Fab. All I can say is they're fabulous. They're great guys to work for. Basically Prometheus, who are the production company. It's an interesting story. I'll tell you a bit of the story. I was on a UFO conference in July, I think it was, in Blackpool last year. And two of the keynote speakers were Eric von Daniken and Giorgio. And they're both there. When we were backstage, I was sat next to Eric. Now, I think everybody was kind of peering over the coffee cups going, this is going to go badly. There's an archaeologist sat next to Eric, So I'm sat there and Eric sat there. So I just leaned over to Eric while he was eating his butty. And I just said, I'm a professional archaeologist. I grew up in the 70s. I said, my dad had your book, Chariots of the Gods, on his shelf. I said, I read it. I didn't necessarily agree with all of it. I said, but you know what? I said, as a trainee archaeologist, it taught me to look at things differently. Yes. I said, at the end of the day, it taught me not to assume that everything was exactly as I was looking at. And he put his butty down and he looked at me and he went, he said, there are 267 question marks in that book. And then he just sat back and he went back to eating his butty. And I thought, that's it. All he wanted to do was make people think.
Yes.
He just wanted people to go, wake up and smell the coffee. Don't just sit there and believe everything you're told. Anyway, after that, I hit it off with him. I hit it off with Giorgio. We had a really good laugh. Giorgio, like a lot of folks do, he just said, you're just the kind of guy we could use on Ancient Aliens. I'll put a word in when I get home, sort of thing. Anyway, I didn't think anything of it. Months go by as they do. And then I got the email off Prometheus, bless them. And they're like, we're filming in London. I think it was in October. And they said, we'll stick you in a hotel and we'll do a couple of days and we'll get a couple of these out of the way. So they sent me loads of background info. They wanted obelisks. They wanted crop circles and a few others. And I said, yeah, I can help you with this. I think we ended up in National Geographic Society.
Damn. I've heard a lot about Prometheus, though, as a production company, and I hear that they're very, very cool.
Yeah, they took us there into the library of the National Geographic.
That's so cool.
Bear with me. And
you're fine. You're fine. I'm going to pull all these coughs out in the audio. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah, we know you're not feeling well, and you're doing this. Thank you so much for this, dude. Yeah, I'll yank all these out. No problem.
So now I know you're editing them out. I'll have a good go at one.
No, have a go.
So, right, it's gone. So anyway, let's pick the story up. So you sat there talking to a producer in America on a connection, and the camera guys are there with the cameras, and you're over here in the UK. So this particular producer in America, he sends me this clip, and it's UFOs producing crop circles over a field in Wiltshire. And I'm sat there and I'm looking at it, and he's like, can you comment on this, please? And I'm like, well, actually, no, I can't. And he's like, why? Why can't you comment on this? I'm like, because they're Chinese lanterns. I said, everybody knows what Chinese lanterns look like. These little tiny gold things, and they're sat there floating and flickering. And I'm like, you don't want to use that. I said, you'll just get laughed off. I said, go online. I said, in the early 1990s, there's actual footage of a ball that whizzes, a ball of light whizzes around this field. You see all the crops go down, and then it whizzes off. I said, that's what you want. Guess what's in the crop circle program? They managed to find this footage.
Because you told them about it. That is awesome. You're like, hey, and I've seen that footage. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's fascinating. The thing goes over and swoops, and the camera follows it, and then it just makes these patterns, and the grass just lays down in those patterns.
Yeah, that's it. And they managed to find that. So I think from that point on, Prometheus was just like, yeah, this is one of us, this guy does actually know what he's talking about. So I went down again, I think it was in November, and did another film with them in a derelict manor house. That was amazing. Wow, it's one of these things where you're going around going, oh, I wish I could get the house clearance on this. It's just awesome. But they filmed in this derelict property. And it was just loads of fun. Really nice guys, really nice crew. Really good experience. I mean, I am aware of the fact that I think they did about 2 hours in total, or maybe longer, maybe nearly 3 hours of footage of me. and I'm likely to only appear in the programs, for a matter of a minute or 2 minutes, and then that'll be it.
They're going to spread you out over all of the episodes in that season, though.
Yeah, they will do.
That's awesome.
It's going to be good. It's loads of fun. I can see them coming back and sort of doing something with me again.
Of course.
Also, of course, I'm not pushing for work here, but you've also got the Curse of Oak Island. I think they could use an archaeologist on that. They really could.
Dude, well, then now I need to know. What have you looked into on the Oak Island case?
It's just, I've watched lots of episodes and I've watched their methodology and how they're doing things.
Yeah.
And I'm watching some of the things they're pulling out. And also in one of the very later seasons, the authorities got involved and said, we're not going to let you dig in that area. And I'm watching it as an archaeologist and I'm thinking, yeah, I know exactly why they're not going to let them in there, because they can't just wade in with a bulldozer, basically, So I'd like to get a bit more involved in the methodology of that. And if nothing else, I think I could say, you don't want to do that, but you do want to do this. Don't do it that way, do it this way. This thing that you've got hold of isn't what you think it is, it's this, and I could get a hold of that and kind of steer it in the right direction. It's something I could get my teeth into.
I see you, Jose Miguel Perez Gomez, going up there. He's this dude from Venezuela. I've got to connect you guys. He's this incredible. And this is one thing as an archaeologist, you too ring this bell for me. He's sitting there talking about, petroglyphs as manifestations of the hunt. So there's ancient peoples are sitting there manifesting the hunt in these ritual experiences, basically seeing it happen and then living it out, right? Manifesting it and then creating it. He's got just this spiritual reverence for all of this, just like you do, and asks the right questions. Tons of question marks in his reports, just the same as yours.
Sounds like we're on the same page there, for sure.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm going to hook y'all up because you two going to lift the curse of the Oak Island.
Well, even if we just get rid of the curse, it just becomes, the treasure of Oak Island.
It would be y'all going up there to do it. So what do you think it is? So just, if you don't mind, for the audience, it's not too familiar with the Oak Island thing. It's just a shaft that was digging down and they kept finding
there was a treasure pit of some form, and over a long period of time, we're talking 250 years, they've been bashing away at this treasure pit. So you can imagine the holes got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's just descended into a bigger mess than you can imagine. And now where the pit used to be is this massive area of ground. But since these guys have really got stuck in and they've took over the island and they're doing it on a bigger scale, they've discovered that the entire island has got stuff on it all over the place. Damn. And I'm convinced they've got evidence going back as far as medieval. So they've got stuff going back to the 1200s on there. And there seems to be a continuous kind of activity, if you like. The same place on the island certainly within the last 1,000 years, people have been dropping in there all the time, which of course flies in the face of traditional American history and archaeology. Yeah, it is. I've never bought into that. No. There was a book by a guy called Barry Fell, and it was called America BC. Mm-hmm. And it was released in something like 1977, something like that. And it was instantly banned. So if anybody wants to know, go find it. America BC by Barry Fell. And it's all in there. You've got, Egyptian, Phoenician, Irish, medieval, Viking, Roman, every man and his dog has been into America at some point.
What do you think about the idea that actually ancient Egypt, Jerusalem, everything was actually in the Americas? Have you heard about this? And that actually the Nile is the Mississippi, and that Memphis, Tennessee is actually the Memphis that's referred to in ancient texts, and that actually this America, where I'm at, is the actual ancient land, and then everything was moved for a deliberate sort of apprehension.
Okay, that's yeah, it goes in two directions for me. First of all, you need to know that I did study geology. I've got qualifications in geology. So natural landscape and natural phenomena and the way the earth mirrors things, from one place to another, has nothing really to do with us. It just happens. So let's get that out of the way, to begin with. We're not talking about any kind of artificial landscapes here. The geology is unique wherever you go. So that's that. And then the second avenue there that you go down is, are these civilizations very similar wherever you go? And the answer is, surprisingly, yes. So it wouldn't surprise me that there were 2 locations or 3 locations or more than that on the planet that all have similar man-made structures, man-made geography, mapping, names, culture, etc. That would not surprise me one bit. How it got there and why is, I think, an entirely different story. Yeah. I'm not sure I would be quite so definitive and quite so definite on, it was all there and then it moved to all over there. And
right.
The archaeology, the geology, the history, it doesn't back that up. It's more likely, actually, the original traditional Atlantean legends are probably closer to the truth. It was all together.
Right.
And people were all doing the same thing in the same place. And then all of a sudden, ba-boom, something happened and they all got scattered. That seems to be more what the reality is supporting, But then, if you go west and call a place Egypt because it's a bit similar to where you got scattered from, and then you go east and call another place Egypt because you didn't realize that the guys that went west have done the same thing.
Yeah, it's
you
like
can see what's happening.
It's like the story of Columbus calling the Native Americans here Indians because he thought he landed in India, right?
Yeah, it's exactly that.
And it's just like, and also whenever you go to a new territory, you bring a lot of your home with you for comforts. It's sort of like how immigrants from any culture will set up mini communities like Chinatown or something like that in another. Yeah. Okay.
That's what I think you're seeing happening. So, I mean, but oh boy, I mean, Ancient Aliens and all that. Again, they are a whiz at picking up on similarities.
Yeah,
this pyramid here looks like that pyramid there. This doorway, that doorway. This window, that window. This language, that language. This figure, that figure. But that's not new. I mean, I've got books going all the way back to the 1960s that do that. But it used to be very underground. It's a very underground thing to do, but in actual fact, no, they're bringing all that forward. I mean, just to wrap up the Ancient Aliens thing, it was quite interesting because you've got Giorgio, who's like, I'm not saying it's aliens, but it might be, you know what I mean? And my zip line is, I'm not saying aliens, but I'm an archaeologist and I don't think it is, you know what I mean? I'm kind of, it's like the balance, you know what I mean? Balancing the two out.
Do you have a tag where you lean in and do something like that, where we're going to see you on a t-shirt soon?
No.
Maybe
I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, maybe.
No, I'm playing the same game. I mean, I rather than have like, writer, presenter, archaeologist. I've just got archaeologist. I wanted that as my zip line because I thought that is what I am. Let's get this right. I'm here as an archaeologist, and then I'm wearing a distinctive red jacket because you're not allowed to wear blue because Eric does. And they said, oh, you're supposed to wear a shirt and a tie, and I'm like, really?
Yeah, I got you.
You really? So I turn up in a black T-shirt, which is what I normally wear. So I've got a little Templar pin badge on here. When I'm doing stuff kind of out and about now, I wear. Giorgio gave me one of those little aeroplanes.
Oh, the ones they found in Colombia.
Yeah, the Vinca Gold ships. He wears one of them. So I do now as well. I'm going to wear that tomorrow for a book signing. So I'm playing to it.
Dude, have fun. Yeah. You're one of these iconic characters anyway. We're going to see you all over memes. I'm going to start them actually. I'm going to grab screenshots from you on Ancient Aliens, and we're going to start I'm going to do some battles. In fact, we're going to have a lot of fun with this, and I'm going to encourage the audience to do this as well. I'll let y'all know when Mark's episode comes out, and we'll grab a couple screenshots with Sukanos right there with you, and we'll have y'all do some sort of side-by-side meme.
Or just put, I'm not saying it's aliens, but I'm an archaeologist, something like that.
It's not aliens because I'm an archaeologist. Yeah,
exactly. Or,
we'll work
I'm not saying it's aliens, I'm an archaeologist, I think it's us.
Yeah, it's us.
Or maybe, just put maybe it's us, you have a play with that sort of thing.
I'm not saying it's aliens, maybe it's us. That's your line, dude. Okay, give me a second to write that down. Listening audience, I apologize to you, but we are very excited with this. There's an audio-only component that's just like looking at their
you hit
right
the nail
now,
on the
driving
head
down the
there,
road.
aren't you?
Okay.
Let me just say here, by the way, if Giorgio ever gets to see this, if he's ever watching this is tongue in cheek. I'm only having some fun, you know.
It's all love.
It's all love.
That's what's so fun about this stuff. Like, I gave Dave a little bit of love, in a little bit of shit. I mean, in a loving way when he shaved his beard. Right? We just love each other. Like, and if you do the same thing, I'll be like, oh, aren't you cold? You know, and we'll have some fun. It's just it's all love anyway.
Dear.
Maybe it's us. Okay, I want to ask you about, and so sticking with I guess, my side of the pond here, the other things about, because I want to ask an archaeologist this. So what about the mummies and the things that have been found in the Grand Canyon? Do you think that was just a cross-cultural thing because that culture was so widespread and then therefore everything dissolved after the big whatever Tower of Babel moment that spread us all out, whatever?
I have read quite a bit on and off about what was found in the Grand Canyon, whether it's officially there, unofficially there, whether the accounts are true or false or whatever. The stuff you get on the internet over here is nonsense. It's all stuff that people have stitched together from elsewhere. But there is something in it, you know, don't get me wrong. The core of it is that there was a culture doing something in the Grand Canyon, and it certainly looks to be an advanced culture doing something as far as the mummies and what have you concerned. Mummies appear the world over. They're absolutely everywhere. So it's not something unique to the Grand Canyon. And the fact that they're in America, actually, to me as an archaeologist, that doesn't come as a surprise. The methods of mummification tend to vary. But, you know, it's ridiculous. We even have it over here. Everything goes rotten over here because it's a damp environment. So they decided they were going to make mummies by dumping them in peat bogs and tanning them. So, you know, this obsession with preserving the body, it's over here as well. It's everywhere. So it wouldn't surprise me in a dry environment like the Grand Canyon that they weren't doing something remarkably similar to what they were doing in Egypt. You know, it's the same thing. But of course, the billion-dollar question is, where did they get the idea from? You know, where does it begin? I don't like the way that America hides things. I've got to be honest. That's,
thank you.
You know, that's just, hey, that's always been a problem. You know, you get a 30,000-year-old skull out of a river in an Indian reservation and it vanishes into the basement of the CIA. You know, I get all the politics and I get all that, but that's not archaeology. You know, it's that's politics. You know, what's that got to do with me? You know, it's something else. But I'm not political, as you'll have gathered from, you know, what we were talking about, King Arthur. It's shoot, it's a duck. You know, if that's how it looks and it quacks like a duck, you know, that's it. You know, I'm all for getting it out there.
You do so. The equivalent of this that I can empathize with is when I had David Weiss on the show, my first year, and it was a flat Earth episode. So I have a guy on talking about flat Earth and stuff, and man, that was the equivalent. The comment section on YouTube was the equivalent of me just opening a room, throwing like a bunch of grenades in it, and just shutting the room. And that's what you do. You just walk in, you're like, hey, society, here's this book, but you don't even stop. It's like you're flying over in your dope ass Del Shao dirigible, and you're just dropping the shit, and it's just going on. People losing their damn
walk in,
minds.
drop the mic, walk out, find another room, do
Bounce.
the same again. That's what I'm all about.
One more question for you about the Grand Canyon, actually, and this one pertains to a video that I saw this guy post that brought up an interesting question, and I just wanted to ask you this. So I know also, you know, you are mainly archaeology, but you have a very strong affinity for geology as well. So the Grand Canyon, okay, we're told that was formed by millions of years by one river, the Colorado River. Now, I understand that rocks are different in different places, okay? But that is the only river out of the thousands and thousands of rivers on this planet that has made that impression in the ground. There are rivers that have been flowing just as long as it, probably, maybe longer, but haven't made that indention and flow faster and deeper and all those things. So what's going on with the Grand Canyon? Do you think that we're not being told what that is?
Well, let me give you a little story, straight little story about how bonkers geology can get, which is why I'm an archaeologist, not a geologist.
Right.
They decided that off Iceland, which is an island just kind of off the north of Britain here, so it's quite local to us, they decided that there was this volcano that was coming up to the surface just off the coast of Iceland, and it was starting to form an island. So all the geologists are like, whoa, this is amazing. Never seen anything like this. Let's get the cameras on there and all the testing equipment, this, that, and the other. And I'm going back quite a way. It's probably 30 years or more ago now. Anyway, they all barrel onto the island, pile all the gear on and dodge the volcanic lava and the bombs and this and get everything set up. And then they back off. They saw about, and this is no lie, about a billion years of geology form in front of them in a week. So all of a sudden, all the textbooks, all the theories going back into the Victorian times, everything they thought they knew, all had to change. It all had to get thrown in the bin, and they had to go back and start again, because the planet, Mother Nature, however you want to view it, Gaia, a living entity, whatever, the planet is quite capable of doing its own thing, and it does it on a very regular basis. So back to the Grand Canyon. Just because that doesn't look like something anywhere else doesn't mean that we as human beings can just invent our own idea of how it comes about and impose that on it. That's not right. That's illogical. We have not got another type site. There isn't anything anywhere else to compare it to, but we could do studies on the rocks. You can have a look at the layering and things like that. And if people really put in the time and effort and really study it, I'm convinced they'll get some surprises. I don't think it's, 100 million years old. I don't think that's the case at all. I think most of what we're looking at is what I would say is post-Fangea, which is the breakup of the continents. And then you've got a couple of other impacts of asteroids and meteorites and what have you. And then you've got a flood, whatever caused that. Boy, is that going to shake the tree. That's going to mess things up big style. And what we're living in is post Ice Age. There's a hell of a lot gone on. I'm not messing with time frames. I don't care how long all this took. Could have took a week, a month, a year, a million years, who knows? But it's all happened because we've got physical evidence of it happening. And that is going to change what's going on at the Grand Canyon. An absolute total mind-blowing thing is that you go to the tallest mountain on planet Earth, the Matterhorn, go to the Matterhorn in the Alps and get yourself on top of the Matterhorn. There are fossilized shells from the bottom of the ocean on top of the Matterhorn because one bit of the continent's dropped and the other bit's gone up. The planet does what the planet does. So if somebody came to me and said, I'm absolutely emphatically, I've got 20 billion qualifications in geology, I'm a scientist, I'm this, that, and the other, I've radiocarbon dated this, that, and the other, and I've looked at, entropy and the decay of atoms, and I'm sure that the rocks are blah, blah, blah. And I'd sat there and I'd just go, do you know what? Prove it.
Yeah.
Prove it.
Yeah, because it almost sounds like they're either hiding something super dope that did happen, and they're just saying it was a river. So in the same sense that you can't, that it just does that, and we just do our best to anthropomorphize what may have happened there. The same may have happened for the traditional story, because there's and I love what you said, but what they saw forming is in its own right, its own pace of geology, which is in its own right fascinating, that formation. But as far as erosion goes, water erodes at the same rate, right? So you would think that even rivers in the same area, because there are a bunch of rivers around there, in the same area didn't carve the same depth, even flowing at the same rate. So I get that creation can occur at different rates and mind-blowing scales, but as far as just erosion, wind, water, they pretty much scour the earth evenly, right?
Yeah,
some obvious differences with degree and intensity and extremes and all of those things. But in that one particular area, also the river flows, and I'm sure you know this, the river flows up elevation.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and it doesn't flow to sea. So that's what's so weird too, is its lateral position east to west rather than north to south. So it almost sounds like either a weapon occurred, like a violent, maybe like what they maybe think that huge scour across Mars is, right? That gigantic crevice, to where there was some sort of energy weapon maybe that skipped off the damn thing, or like you said, an impact, and then it just sort of filled with water,
It's a classic case of making assumptions based on what we're not seeing.
Yes.
It's the absence of something that's causing the problem. Because I mean, if you go, let's go Platonic and say, Plato, Atlantis, down goes Atlantis. Let's say 10,500 BC. That's 12,500 years ago. So all of a sudden, you've got 500,000 years or 75% of a million years or even a million years worth of erosion taking place all in one go, because we're missing that bit, and it's taking place 12,500 years ago. And it's gone. So it's cut the channel and it's gone. So what we're doing is we're looking at what we're left with. So, the Grand Canyon might only be 13,000 years old. That might be it.
And it could have been a huge scour and then filled with water. And it didn't erode from the flat surface like they show you those models of, and it just slowly eats down. It's like, dude, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of an odd thing. Plus, I mean, right over there next to it in Winslow, Arizona, there's Meteor Crater. So you've already got a massive Meteor Crater impact a few miles away, right? So it could have been the trail of something, right? Yeah,
even what I would call a proper geologist, even somebody that really knows his onions, would look at the whole of that part of that continent as a complete picture and would be looking for impact craters, plate tectonics, movement, earth movement. You can't just... You can't be an ecological geologist and just go, hey, guess what? It's raining. Therefore, it's washed it out with rain. You can't do that. Nothing happens in isolation. You've really got to look at the bigger picture. But you've got to put the hours in.
Exactly, but it's just like your King Arthur discoveries. I mean, this information's out there. Anyone could have found this at any time, but people have been writing the story of King Arthur for a long time now, and you're the one that figured out that it was different. So in my mind, and same thing, this is back to Jose as well, this dude discovered a Spanish fleet that was missing since the 1700s. And he just did a couple calculations and was like, yeah, it's right over here. And he found a bunch of cannons, like he discovered this whole thing. Then he discovered like the pathway to El Dorado, like this entrance to the actual El Dorado. Then he found these petroglyph things. But what I'm saying is that these remarkable things, like these lost artifacts you're talking about, perhaps this Grand Canyon mystery, the King Arthur thing, they've been misunderstood because it was waiting for you, Mark, to come out and understand it. It wasn't waiting for anybody else. It was waiting for you. And so this is what I find fascinating, because I feel this way about Jose, everything. You sent me your coughs, but I can edit those on the fly. Okay. And so it's just fascinating, again, the reverence in the eyes that it takes to see this kind of stuff. And so even on the thing like the Grand Canyon, like I think it's fascinating what they found in it. And again, the legends are so cool. And of course, now there's a big metal grate over that thing and you can't go see it and you're not allowed to get in there. And so that even adds to the damn mystery. And then the thought that it was a bunch of Buddha statues in there and hieroglyphics, and actually the mummification reported that was found in the Grand Canyon was identical to the Egyptians. The process, like they could identify the exact process, just like you said. So it's just fascinating, and I love that. And so hopefully, maybe you, maybe somebody, maybe I'm going to team you and Jose up anyway.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure
I love
that's
it. Love
a
it.
super archaeological team there. Okay, one more thing. I want to close this out here. First by just sending you all the blessings in the world for hanging out with us.
It's been fun.
Absolutely. And secondly, what are you working on next? So you alluded to a book that you have coming out next. What are you working on?
Well, it's one of those things where, having put out the King Arthur book, you look at Philip and you go, well, his thing is UFOs. And at the end of the day, I'm probably reasonably well known for doing a UFO crash that happened in 1983. I produced a DVD on it called Europe's Roswell for Reality Entertainments, which is an American company. I did that in 2008. The idea was to go and have a look at, this impact and see if we can find any more debris and look at it from an archaeological perspective. Anyway, as it turns out, the MOD had cleared this site. There wasn't anything else there. But the DVD that was produced in 2008, it ended up being shown all over the place. It was on Amazon Prime. I think you can even get Europe's Roswell now on the internet. I think it might be out there now. But there's no book version of it. And what Philip did last year, he said to me, if it crashed in 1983, he said, well, 2023 is 40 years. It's 40 years since Impact. So I'm like, hey, there's a book title.
That's right.
Europe's Roswell, 40 years since Impact or whatever. So, and he said, well, why don't you actually put it in print, get all the material and see what you can find that will update this, from 2008. Now, the actual crash was investigated by a guy called Gary Rowe. He's quite a famous UFO ufologist over here. So it's all back with the sort of team that Philip's used to and people that are known. So I just thought, yeah, that'd be such a blast, because I've had really heavy stuff through lockdown with the crystal skulls. I've had 40 odd years plus doing the King Arthur one. So let's just do it, one single individual thing. But it's also given me the opportunity at the beginning to put my own 2 UFO encounters in there. So there's a couple of stories of things that I've seen and happened to me in the past. Then there's the actual crash. And then there's all the data then that I couldn't put in the DVD. So extra script material, extra stuff from Gary, extra photographs, all towards the end. Gary did another couple of interviews after the DVD, so they're in there. And it brings it right back up to date. There's some amazing photographs of the debris in there. The debris is absolutely knockout. And it's funny because it's an unusual book, because it starts at the end. You've already got the debris. You're already looking at these pieces of some crashed, unidentified flying object. You're thinking, what the hell is this? And you've got to go backwards and try and find out where this came from and what it is. So I do a nice conclusion about what I think it is and where I think it's come from. I've got to be honest, it's not a very long book. It's quite the opposite to the Arthur one. If you order the giant hardback, which is what this is, that's an absolute beast. So it's not like that. It's the same format as the Crystal Skulls one. And we're thinking of doing it as a sort of a as a blast, we're not going to do a hardback. We're not going to make a big, thing of it. It's there to be read. It's there to get the information out there. So we're in the proofreading stage now. So we're quite a long way down the process. We've got a really nice cover, and it's due out in August. I believe it's coming out in August.
We're going to talk to you 12 more times before then, but that we're looking forward already for that also. So thank you for that gift that you were retroactively giving us in the future. That is awesome, man. We'll definitely have you back on and talk about that. That is so cool. Damn it, Mark Olly. I love the shit out of you, brother. This is so awesome. And thank you again for showing up with the sniffles. I appreciate you, brother.
Oh, yeah, I don't let something like that put me down. I really don't.
No. Fuck no, you're a rock star. All right, well, all the ways to find you, of course, located down in the show notes. I'm going to be throwing your band down there, your books, all the ways to find you, man. I
forgot to tell you that as well. That's exclusive. We've got the CD out at last, the actual album. So, really? The 12, 13 track disc is out. But it's so new that the box of discs was only delivered yesterday. So you're the first person on planet Earth to know that it's actually gone into hard copy. Yeah. We've got the discs now and the T-shirts and everything that goes with it. So it actually exists. It physically exists now. There's another exclusive for you. So anybody out there that wants them, get on the Copperworm Instagram and all the other stuff. We're on Facebook. We're everywhere. We're on all the social media. And order yourself a copy because it's out. It's there now.
Dude, I'm doing it. All of it's linked, guys, down there. Go check it out. Mark Olly, thank you so much. You're a brother, man. You back anytime. Thank you.
Pleasure. Absolute rock and roll. Loved every minute of it.
Just want to take a moment and thank our dear friend Mark Olly for coming by and hanging out with us. All the ways to find him, as well as his incredibly cool new book, The Polychronicon of Merlin, Joseph, and Arthur, located down below. Make sure you guys check that out. Absolutely fascinating. Thank you again, Mark Olly. Now, as well as our resource links located down in the show notes, I want to take a second to acknowledge the Phi Tribe link that is down there. Now, what that is a YouTube channel. Go check out the YouTube channel if you don't mind. I'm sending y'all there because they'd recently flown me out to Atlanta, and now I'm the reality expander, or they called me the manager, but now I'm the reality expander of Phi Tribe, and absolutely extremely grateful for this. It's an honor, and this is huge, massive, huge. So check the show notes down there to get a load of that and take some of their sleep mixes for a ride. I've been getting overwhelming response with people saying how I haven't slept that good in years. I haven't slept all the way through the night in years, and thank you, all that. But it's fascinating, guys, so make sure you check that out. Just wanted to point that out down there. as well as expandingrealitypodcast.com. And y'all know what that entails. That's the mothership. That's where you can sign up to become an Expansive Insider and get all the bonus stuff. That's also where you can support the mission. You can get all the rentals. If you want to just rent the exclusive stuff for the weekend, you can totally do that. We're very flexible with all this stuff. We are here to empower. So check the show notes for all that stuff, guys. One more thing, the merch store. We have brand new merch down there, so make sure y'all check that out. And also, of course, the handbook. Y'all can follow along with the show with the Expanding Reality handbook. So make sure y'all check that out. All right, guys, so go out into this incredibly beautiful and mysterious place, whatever the hell this thing is, and y'all pick up a piece of litter. Be nice to everybody that you come across, please, and thank you for that in advance, as well as buy somebody in line a coffee or a meal around you if you really want to step your game up there. Also, go ahead and get out of the left-hand lane if you've got somebody behind you wanting to pass. I really appreciate that. That one's for me as well. Also, go ahead and go out into this incredibly beautiful and mysterious place, above all and anything else, and y'all just be good to one another. That's it. Thank you so much for watching, listening, engaging, and just being the cool sons of bitches ever. We'll see you next time.